your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, welcome, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week we have an interesting topic. Our topic is video game horror. And video games have evolved over time from the digital boxy Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, with the base video sounds to modern video games have complex storylines, fantastic artwork, real voice actors and real actors carrying out some roles. So video games are also horror video games are among the most popular of all time. So it makes sense that there's a crossover between these games that are cinematic events and actual cinema.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's a natural fit for directors and writers to come across video games that inspire them to make the movies because these video games now have enough content of like cut scenes, story, built-in lore, monster design that's already pre-packaged in them, and just it's really just there for the taking for Hollywood or directors to kind of come in and just make movies out of these. And you can actually YouTube people actually take cut scenes of video games and they just edit all the cut scenes and they'll just put it together in a YouTube video, and you can watch like an hour and a half long movie of just the cutscenes. Like you can
Yeah.
do that with almost like all of the modern games now. People actually go and do that. It's pretty fascinating. So yeah, it's a natural fit for both those mediums to kind of come together nowadays.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think video game horror got off to a bad start and a bad reputation because all the things you mentioned that allowed ease of entry allowed people to take a lot of shortcuts. And I think of movies like Yui Bowles' House of the Dead, which is not one of the worst horror movies. It's one of the worst pieces of any type of film ever ever
Yui Bolt
recorded.
gets that a lot though.
I mean, it's so bad. And then I think of failed endeavors like Doom, starring The Rock.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
video game horror got such a bad reputation for a long time, and then you see things like the TV show The Last of Us, where it really is elevated to such a high level. It's dramatically excellent. It's well acted,
yeah.
scripted, cinematography. Everything about it is top notch. So there's really an evolution in there with a renewed appreciation for quality.
Yeah, and it's sometimes I think it's executive decisions, it's not creative decisions that kind of ruin it. Like, you have these great games with source material, like taking Doom for example. All of the source material was right there, and then when they went to go make that movie, they said, "Yeah, we're gonna make it completely different, though." And it's like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like, just give the fans what they that's all. It's a portal to hell that's found on Mars. Awesome. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just run with that. Like, no,
Yeah.
we're gonna make it about zombies.
It's
And it's
almost
just
like
like,
they had a they had another script sitting around and they just wanted to slap
and
the
they just
title on
slap
it.
Doom on it. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Let's take advantage of this. We're going to go back in our categories this week, or in our movies this week. We're going to go back kind of the midpoint, or probably early on in the development, and with two movies that have completely different tonal approaches to what they're doing with the source material. One's very lighthearted and very glossy, very popcornish, and
Yeah, action packed. Yeah.
one is very mythological, lore building, complex
Atmospheric.
world,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. Movies are only 2 years apart, but they are night and day in their approach.
Yeah. And what's interesting about both of these movies is one of them stayed close to the source material and the others didn't.
Our first film in the category video game horror is Resident Evil Apocalypse from 2004, directed by Alexander Witt. And this is the second in the series. And this is an interesting series because the movies, that's probably the most successful video game movie series. But the movies got kind of bigger and were more successful as they went on. It almost follows like the Fast and the Furious pattern,
Yeah.
where It started out modest and then just kept growing. This series kind of died and went off the deep end, but in the middle, it had some decent films.
I think these movies, all of the Resident Evil movies, to me are a guilty pleasure. They're fun. I enjoy them. Although I think we were absolutely robbed because the original Resident Evil movie they were gonna make, George Romero wrote 5 scripts for it, and he was trying to make it, and they were gonna go ahead and have George Romero write and direct the Resident Evil movie, almost because the Resident Evil movies were kind of a homage to the Dead series. Like it's obvious. And so they kind of brought in George Romero, and he was like, "This stuff's great. I'll make a movie out of this."
Yeah.
And some people in the companies they were like, "Yeah, this is great," and others were like, "No, we're going to take a different approach." And I feel there's actually a documentary coming out this year on what happened to his movie, like why it never happened. So
Wow.
I'm actually really looking forward to that documentary. So we'll never know. We'll get the documentary, but we're never going to know what this series could have been like if George Romero it had been like his second coming, like he's going to take care of the Resident Evil series. That would have been cool.
Yeah,
Didn't happen.
you want to
Hmm?
depress yourself with a what if, start reading all the movies that George Romero thought about making or tried to make and didn't make. It makes
Oh,
you go like, oh, I would have loved to
we
have
were
seen that.
robbed. Yeah, the universe was robbed. But yeah, so these movies kind of, the director they brought in, he actually made a statement that saying that he intentionally didn't want to have any video game tie-ins with this series because he was afraid that it would make them fail because previously if movies were too close to the games they tended to flop, and he was trying to just take some of the source material and then make his own thing with it.
Hmm.
And whether I mean these movies were successful, so to his credit it worked, right? So
Yeah, and I guess that's the goal in Hollywood is not necessarily, people talk about art and there's certainly plenty of it, but
yeah,
the goal is always to make money
yeah,
in
right.
these days.
And they have.
So this movie starts with the T virus being released into Raccoon City. Umbrella Corporation, which is the largest corporate entity in the world in this world, and they kind of
Yeah.
run everything. They have their hands in government and security, and they're an
9 out of 10
overwhelming,
homes have stuff in their house from the corporation or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, almost apocalyptic control of the world. They start extracting important people from the city, including Dr. Charles Ashford. Um, and they grab his young daughter, Angie, and she's taken out of school. But the car she's being brought in is demolished by a garbage truck and doesn't make it out.
Yeah.
The city is erupting in violence as the virus spreads. And it's funny you talk about George Romero. There's a very Land of the Dead feel to the city being sealed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And this kind of, it follows the game pretty similarly. They use some of the source material like in the game. Like you kind of start off in like the apocalyptic Raccoon City and everything's just kind of a mess. So
Yeah, they use certainly cues. And
yeah.
I played 100 years ago. I played the original Resident Evil.
Same.
I haven't played a lot of the sequels. I know there's a ton of them now,
Yeah, they still make them. Yeah,
but
they're on like the eighth one.
but just the vibe and the basic concepts are certainly present here.
Yep.
The Umbrella Corp activates Alice. Alice is a test subject who is bonded with the T virus. It's been incorporated into her cells, yet somehow she is not a zombie. She
Yeah.
she wakes in an abandoned hospital, and evil Major Kane has decided to seal the city off, and they're testing people at the exits. In one of those classic scenes you see where the government's scanning people, and then something inevitably goes wrong. It's been done in The Crazies. It's been done in
Yeah.
I Am Legend. It's just,
It's a trope.
it's
Yeah.
one of those things that happen. An infected person shows up at the site. They start turning. They bite somebody. And now forget the test. The city's just sealed up completely, and they will shoot civilians that won't leave.
Yep.
We meet Officer Jill Valentine and her former partner, Peyton Wells. Jill Valentine's outfit matches the character in the video game. But when you first see it, it's almost ridiculous because she's a cop and she's wearing like a short mini skirt and a tight sleeveless shirt. And it's like,
Yeah.
unless she's undercover vice, that outfit does not fly in any other
At
official
at all.
capacity.
Yeah, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's very campy.
Very campy for sure. Uh, yeah, and they end up running off to protect themselves. Her former partner Peyton and Wells and a reporter Terry, and they all end up in a church. Inside this church, they meet a priest who has his infected sister tied up, and he's feeding her, which is kind of a gross scene.
Yeah,
And then we see these mutated monsters. One of the things about Resident Evil is they make zombies. This virus turns people into zombies, but all their experimentation almost gives them free reign to like make all these crazy other monsters that are just based on experiments. So there's these mutated, super fast, stick to the walls and ceilings creatures that are running around this church.
yeah, yeah, like the liquors and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah, and they attack our group, and they run out of ammo, and you think they're doomed when Alice crashes her motorcycle through the stained glass church window and begins killing them all. She runs one over, jumps off the motorcycle, and lets it
yeah.
run and shoots the motorcycle, exploding the gas tank and the creature. And it's like, okay, I see what we're doing here.
Yeah, yeah, they go for a lot of the big like the gung fu stuff. It's kind of not like the slow walking like atmospheric horror, whereas there's just a lot of action.
Yeah, definitely an action horror, not a
Yeah.
creepy horror in any way.
Right.
Uh, so she now joins our group, and they leave, and they're going through a cemetery, and the dead start to rise from the ground. Like when this virus is out there, like the last place you would go would be the cemetery.
Right. I don't want to go to a cemetery anyways.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, what did you think was going to happen? You see what's going on here, right?
Right. Right. It's
Um,
reanimating dead things. Right.
yeah, and the cops and the military are getting overrun with the dead. They're everywhere. Umbrella activates the Nemesis program, and we see what this is. This is a giant mutated monster with a huge like M50 gun, and
Yeah.
he's impervious to gunshots, and he just stomps through the streets, just destroying everything.
Yeah, he's the ultimate giant, slow moving, deadly zombie. Like every one of his like every time he steps down, it's just like thud, thud, like just this big, huge monster.
Yeah. And Dr. Ashford offers Alice a deal. Find his daughter that was lost in the crash, and he will get the group out. While they're having this discussion, Nemesis kills Peyton Wells, and Alice charges at it to attack it, but finds she cannot hurt it.
Right.
It's
It's
impervious
like
to anything
indestructible.
she's doing, and like she ends up running for her life, and it stalks her, but she manages to escape. Jill and Terry meet LJ, who's the typical wisecracking regular citizen that every movie like this needs. It's Mike Epps, and he's
Yeah.
just cracking one-liners the entire time, and he's a little comic relief to a somewhat ridiculous movie to begin with, but fun.
Yeah, yeah. I thought he was a little out of place. When I first like I remember like first hearing about this movie, I was like, Mike Epps is going to be in a Resident Evil movie, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, you see that a lot. The outlandish character that just kind of takes the edge off everybody else for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Originally, the part was written for Snoop Dogg, who backed out, and they cast Mike Epps, and they had to tweak the dialogue a little bit to make it more his personality than Snoop Dogg's.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I imagine he probably wanted to play it more serious, and they're like, no, we want you to be funny, and he was like, no, thanks. Yeah,
They all go to the school to look for Angie, and they split up. There they meet Carlos, who's a former Umbrella soldier who was stranded and has basically turned against the corporation that left him to die. Poor Terry, our reporter, is alone and gets attacked by a group of infected kids, and she's killed. And then Jill finds the young girl Angela that they're there to rescue, and they are attacked by infected Dobermans, which I actually thought these were pretty creepy. They're like, you jump a fence and you're confronted with a guard dog. Well, these are those dogs, except half their skin is missing and their eyes are
Yeah,
warped and there's blood dripping
they
out of
they
their
look
maw.
unstoppable. Yeah, yeah, they're zombie dogs, which I thought is a great touch. It's a good homage to the game too, because they're in the game.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So they're attacked. They try like turning on gas and like throwing a match, and the match goes out. But just as they think they're about to get done in, Alice arrives and blows the whole thing up, covering the young girl with a like a blanket, like a bomb blanket. That where did she get this from? She just
Yeah,
had it.
yeah.
In an instant, just covered them both with it. But you're not looking for realism here, I guess.
I mean, you could nitpick a lot of the logic from all of these movies. All of the Resident Evil movies kind of have that. It's like, well, how did this happen? It's like, well, they just happened to have what they need at the time to progress the movie, So it
Hmm.
just kind of happens.
Yeah,
But the whole, like you said, the whole thing's outlandish to begin with, so you kind of have to accept some of it.
yeah. So they blow up the place as they're leaving, and they discover in just being around each other that Angie knows that Alice has the virus, and Alice knows that Angie has the virus. Apparently, Angie's father was the one who invented it to cure her from a disease. Uh, another trope with the scientist that has good intentions and dabbles in things that aren't meant for mankind to dabble in.
Yeah, yeah, but also works for the most evil corporation in the world. So yeah,
Yeah. She takes a serum that her father also has provided her for that prevents her from turning into a zombie. So he not only has the T virus, he has the cure, but it's not available to the public.
yep,
So Dr. Ashford sends them to City Hall. They got 47 minutes. There's one last chopper out of town because a nuclear bomb is going to be dropped and the city's going to be wiped out. And it's all going to be covered up under the guise of a nuclear reactor
right,
failing. Another thing we've seen over and over again is the government cover up.
yeah,
Well, Kane was aware of everything that was going on the whole time, and he let it happen. And he was using Ashford to catch the group. So they arrived and find this chopper is heavily guarded, and they start taking out the guards. You got Carlos is trained, you got Jill Valentine is trained, and our main character Alice is super powered with the virus. She's fast, she's strong, she's a lethal killer.
yeah. She's like a superhero at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So they take out all the guards and they start to board the helicopter, thinking it's their last way out. And they are stopped by Kane and Nemesis, who came to cut them off. Kane forces Alice to fight Nemesis by shooting Dr. Ashford and threatens to kill the rest of her group. And his whole goal here is to see which experiment turned out better.
Yeah,
They had parallel evil experiments going on, and they produced Alice and
and
Nemesis.
yeah. So now they want to see, all right, which direction do we take this in? It's a control group experiment, right? They're like, all right, let's pit them together and see what happens. Yeah,
Yeah. Alice realizes that Nemesis was her friend Matt from the first movie who was captured and was having all this experiment done on him, and
right.
it realizes what they've done to him. But with no choice, they fight. No guns, just hand to hand, and it's an interesting fight. It's weird with the giant lumbering thing and the super fast, but both
Yeah.
sides have their moments in the fight.
He's like a giant 10-foot Jason Voorhees, right, with like a mangled face and
And he almost looks like Jason and Jason X with the distorted,
yes,
mush
yeah,
of his head. Um,
he
she
does. Yeah,
notices a spike
that's what I
sticking
thought
out
when
of
I
the
saw him.
building. Yeah, no, it's a great comparison. I didn't think of that till you just said that. She notices a piece of metal, a large spike sticking out of the building, and kicks Nemesis till he's impaled on the spike. And so she's effectively won. And Kane now wants her to finish him, and she refuses. And he's like, okay, well, then you're all done. And Nemesis kind of slides off the spike and picks up his giant M50 or whatever it is machine gun. But
Yeah, it's
instead
big,
of,
huge, like gun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big circle with it just spits out
It's like
like
a Gatling
5,000.
gun. Yeah, yeah.
When he first shows it, it's got 5,000 on the ammo reader, and he empties it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's over the top like a lot of the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't even overheat.
No, but when he picks up the gun, he does not turn it on Alice's group. He instead turns it on Kane's group and kills all of the Umbrella personnel. The
Yep.
bomb is ready to drop, and we know time is limited, and the Umbrella group is coming in with helicopters to try and take out Alice and her friends. Nemesis takes out the helicopters and actually dies protecting Alice from the crash of a helicopter that he blew up. So it's like a
So
last.
it's almost like yeah, like Matt Addison. It's almost like there's like still some humanity in him. Like he can kind of like there's still part of him that exists that can like remember.
Yeah, and you can see it, in his eyes when Alice does not want to finish him, and Kane's like, wants him dead. He kind of makes a realization that he's on the wrong side here, and his humanity comes back.
Yeah.
It's cheesy. The two fighting is a little ridiculous, but again, this whole movie's is just fun. It's
Yeah.
popcorn, but
Yeah.
they do it well.
It's like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. These movies are just fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So he protects Alice. She does get hit in the head and is knocked out, but he saves her life, sacrifices himself. Um, so our group gets on the last chopper. Now they're ready to leave. Uh, LJ Mike Epps is flying the helicopter. Somehow he knows how to do that, which is great. But they throw Kane out, and they're on a rooftop, and we see the whole time that the dead are charging up the stairs and trying to get onto the rooftop. At the last minute, they throw Kane out and leave him to the dead, which was, he's picks up a gun and he's shooting, but he's severely outnumbered. And
Yeah.
he pulls another trope where he takes the gun and he's going to finish himself before they can, and he doesn't have any more bullets.
Yeah.
And
Click.
he screams as they rip him apart.
Yeah. Yeah. This a lot of these movies have stolen tropes from almost every zombie movie. So
And that's like straight out of Day of the Dead. Exact same thing
it is.
happens.
Yeah.
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 But Kane is a very unlikable character. We're happy to see him ripped apart.
So you're happy to see it happen. Yeah.
So they fly away, and the city is annihilated by a nuclear bomb. And the blast knocks their chopper out of the air. They don't quite make it far enough to be free. Chopper goes down. 2 hours later, at the crash site, there's a crew searching. No one is found but Alice's body. The rest are gone. She is taken back to Umbrella. We see her in a water tank like Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's healed. And they wake her up, and she's disoriented. And they're like, "It's okay. Okay. Do you know your name? Do you know your name?" And she's like staggering. And then all of a sudden you see everything from the first two movies flash through her mind.
Yeah.
And you like see her eyes come alive, and she makes recognition, and she has a great quote: "My name is Alice, and I remember everything." And then she just starts
I actually
annihilating
love
all
that
those
line.
people there. They're
Yeah. I
scientists.
love that line actually.
You can't wake up Alice and not have security. They have doctors.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't know. Right. Yeah.
So she wipes them all out except for the main one, who is Jar Mormont from Game of Thrones. And
Mhm.
she walks out the front door, and there's all kinds of security there, not inside, but there. And a car pulls up, and out of the car step Jill Valentine and Carlos.
Mhm.
And they are disguised as like higher ups. And they say, "We were told to take her." They're like, "On whose authority?" And they're like, "My authority." And they flash a badge, and
Yeah.
they put her in the
Yeah.
car and drive her away. In the car is the rest of the group, right? The whole group is back together.
The band's back together.
They get to security, and Dr. Isaacs, who's now in charge, security's questioning their credentials, and he tells the guards to let them go. And then as they leave, he says, "Begin Operation Alice." And we see her eyes click. And we know it's part of Umbrella's plan for her going forward. and that's the
Yeah, yeah,
movie. And
they've
it's
kind of implanted something in her.
and what they really did with this movie, in my opinion, is they took the standalone original and they kind of amped it up with more action, more characters, and they built a bridge to a world they wanted to explore with further movies. It's really what they did, in my opinion. It's an enjoyable movie. It's got some good action. It's got some good blood, but it's cheesy popcorn.
It's 100%. That's what it is. These movies, they're not the greatest horror movies. It's not the best action movie, not the best horror movie. But it's fun, like you said. Like I think these movies are just easy to watch. They pay homage to a lot of the great movies, and I think they do them well. As campy as they can come off, I think they're well done. And I'm a huge fan of Mila Jovovich, to be honest with you. I think she's the kind of driving force of these movies. So it makes it that much more enjoyable when you enjoy the actors and actresses.
It knows what it's trying to be and pulls that off well. And I think you can
Yeah,
appreciate that, and it's good fun.
absolutely.
Our second movie in video game horror is Silent Hill from 2006, directed by Christoph Gans. And this movie takes a completely different approach to video game fare in that
Yeah.
it is immensely serious. It takes itself very serious. It's a long movie. I think it's too long, but it tries to uh, build this mythology. It tries to build, it's very complicated for a video game horror movie. And I must admit, I've never played the game. I don't know anything about it. So if there's parts there that fill the backstory that I'm not aware of, um, I struggled. I'd never seen this movie before either. And I struggled through it. It took me two sittings to watch it all. I thought it was
Yeah.
convoluted. I thought it tried to be heavy handed and deep and philosophical. And I thought it missed the mark.
Yeah. Well, one thing, this movie gets points for a few things, and one of them is that it really captures the atmosphere of the game. And it uses the actual source music from the video game, and they put
Mm.
that music in the movie, so it makes it feel like the game. And I think it does a great job. Just for doing that in itself, I think it gets points for that. The director actually played the game, and he said, I want to make this a movie. Like it was like a passion project for him. And so you don't see that often. Usually, like, studio gets the rights and then they hire people. But this guy actually he actually sought out Capcom, and he was like sent them a 37-minute video saying why he wanted to do it.
Yeah,
Took him a
I saw
couple of
that.
years, and he finally got the rights. So it was kind of a passion project for him.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
that. Their response was that because other people had been, looking for the rights to it, their
yeah,
response was that no one understood the source material like he did.
yeah. And so they did a good job with the source material as far as the atmosphere goes. They had to hire a writer, so the writing is a little different than the game. Um, but one of the reasons I agree it's too long, and Sean Bean's character, the husband, and the original script, he wasn't involved in any of those scenes that he is in the movie. They just had him in the beginning and they had him at the very end when he was sleeping.
Hmm.
And one of the complaints with the final script, a lot of the suits that the executives are saying, there's no men in this movie. It's just pretty much all women. How come
Yeah,
there's no men? So they had to go, which is the stupidest thing ever. They
right.
so they just inserted his story with the detective throughout the movie, which is completely unnecessary. They
Completely
literally just put
unnecessary.
it. They just slopped it on top of the script, and it's like if you take his scenes out, this movie is an hour and a half long, and I think it paces well. It's a little convoluted with the story. It does get a little complicated, but we keep going back to the husband, and it's like we don't need that.
Yeah.
It just didn't need. It
Yeah,
just
I
did
read the
not need
same
to be.
thing. It was producers forced it to be written in there, and I
Yeah,
agree it didn't add anything to the story.
added nothing.
It
The
actually
movie
took
was
away
would have
from it because it would pull you out of this world they're trying to
pull
immerse
you
you
out of
in.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
There's another thing it does get points for, and I was going to mention this as well. I don't want to be all negative. There is some stunning visuals in this movie, um,
for
including
2006 too. Yeah.
including when she first wakes up uh, in the um, in the Silent Hill world, and you can
Hmm.
see it's a world covered in. Almost looks like snow at first, but it's ash. This
It's
town has been
Ash,
burning underneath for 30 years.
and
It's
that
kind
comes
of a
right from
cool
the game.
mythology.
Yeah, that comes right from the game. I think they nailed it. I think they get the whole atmosphere of the game. I think they did a really good job. As far as video game adaptations, this is actually one of the best ones they've ever done. They actually really stuck to the source material as much as they could. And just for that alone, I mean, I haven't played this game since I was a kid, but when you watch it, you get that, oh, this is Silent Hill. You know what I mean? Like they did a good job with it.
So we start with Rose, our main character, taking her adopted daughter Sharon to Silent Hill. It's a ghost town that she speaks of when she's sleepwalking, and desperate, Rose is trying to help her. They're pulled over by a police officer, Sybil Bennett, and before she can get to their window, they speed off, taking the fork that says "To Silent Hill." Once, as they're trying to get away from the cop, a girl appears in the road. They spin out and crash, and Rose wakes to find Sharon gone, and she's in the ashy white sky of the Silent Hill world.
Hmm.
I thought all that was well done, put you there, and I liked the reveal of waking up, and it's a very clear visual imagery that you're not where you were when you went to
Right.
sleep.
Yeah, it's like some kind of they've entered into some parallel dimension kind of thing. It's very cool. Like the lighting, everything's different.
Yeah. She walks into town and sees the girl from the road running, and she chases her. She follows her deep down beneath the town into an elaborate underground area, almost like there's a city beneath the city. And then we hear the ominous, like an air raid siren alarm sound through the
Hmm.
entire town. And when the alarm goes off, see there's strong men, there's these big men in gas masks, and these bald, mutated creatures that seem to be burning from within are like
Yeah.
chasing her.
Yeah, these like golem children type thing. I don't know what
Yeah,
they
and
were.
they're
They're nightmares.
the visual effects are it's two things at once. The visual effects are in many ways awesome, and then in some ways they're dated.
That's just the progress of computers, right? I mean, every movie from 2000, if you look at the computer effects, it's dated.
Yeah, yeah, but they tried to do so much high end stuff. A lot of it they pulled off. I will give
Yeah.
them credit. Some of it, um, like the insects that grow out of the darkness,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
that looked pretty poor. And I was thinking, in my video game mindset, I'm thinking you would actually see that cleaner in a video game made
In a
today.
video game, yeah, yeah. But then you look at the triangle head monster, and they nailed that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what it looked like in the game. Like I just yeah, there's some hit and misses, but I mean, yeah, it's
So
2006 movie doing a lot of computer animation, and yeah,
yeah, no, so the visuals are spectacular. They
yeah,
really are. They really
yeah.
do an amazing job.
But
A
some
couple
of
of
it's a
them,
little, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but you got to give them credit for the vision they put out there.
Mhm.
Um, these bald, mutating, burning creatures are chasing her, and they catch her. But as they're approaching her, as they're about to overwhelm her, the fires inside of them, they all burn up and go away. And Rose wakes up back in town, and she tries to walk like she's walking out of town. And this is our first experience with the cliff edge. The
Yeah,
town exists, at least in this dimension that she's in. The town exists cliffed on all sides.
yeah. You can't leave,
You can't get to it, and you can't get away from it. You are
right?
literally stuck.
And they say that in the beginning when she's trying to get to the town, everyone's like, you can't get there anymore; it's closed off.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're watching it, you're kind of like, what do they mean? And it's like, well, this is what they mean. Like once you go there, you're stuck there, right?
She does at the cliff's edge meet a local woman. She looks like a street urchin. She's haggard and uh, covered in
Yeah,
ash, and
yeah,
her name's Dahlia. And she tells her that all the children are gone. And she said, "Well, I'm looking for my daughter." And she shows her a picture of Sharon, and she's like, "Yeah, that one was mine." And it's like we know Sharon's adopted,
yeah,
but it's like, wow, this is her actual mother here, this woman. Um,
yeah.
Rose goes back to the
Is there some
car.
kind of delusion going on? So there's an immediate mystery when that
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely. This is another example of what you're talking about now. She goes back to the car and tries to use her cell, and she gets Chris's voicemail. Chris gets a phone call, but no one's there. So it's like they have to
Yeah.
do this back and forth to show you that they're in different realities and different dimensions, and
Yeah.
it's totally unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. It didn't have to be done. It adds nothing to the movie.
Meanwhile, back in the quote unquote real world, Chris and the cops arrive at her car, but they find nothing there, and it's again just one more beat you over the head with they're in different realities.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, like you said, the Chris stuff is all completely
It just didn't need to be there.
nonsensical.
Yeah, it was slapped on by executives.
Uh, Back at the car where Rose really is, Sybil is there now, and she cuffs her. She's like, you took off from me, and she cuffs her, and she tries to call it in on the radio, but she also can't get through. So now they're together in this white ashen burnt world, and they walk and they come to a cliff edge, and now a gangly, this like extended, it's like a Mr. Stretch Armstrong, gangly,
With no arms.
long-limbed
Yeah.
creature comes staggering at them. And they do a good job with like the stop motion because it doesn't move normal. It like twitches and convulses its way towards you.
Yeah.
So being confronted by this abomination, Sybil pulls her gun and shoots it, but Rose uses the distraction to run off.
Yeah, because when you're in an ashy, multi-dimensional hell state, when you have cuffed, you want to run.
For sure. And so she goes to an abandoned school where she again finds this girl and she pursues her. And there's creatures and there's the men in the gas masks, and now they're carrying a yellow bird in a cage and they're after her.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know this. I don't know the game. I've never played it, but if there's some symbolism there, it seemed like this is weird. Let's just put it here.
Yeah, yeah. It's the whole canary in the coal mine type thing. Like, I guess if the canary starts going off, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. Okay. The
But no, I
alarm.
didn't get it either because it's just in there once.
Yeah,
Right.
and then it's gone.
Right.
What
Like,
they
as a
do with the
producer, you
canary.
have to go like, so that's a cool little symbolism. Are we going to see this again later? And they're like, nope, just once. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Just and they're just carrying it like it really doesn't
You
help
only
you
see it
chase
that one
her.
scene. It's right. It's not a factor in the movie.
You
It
could
just
chase her
happens
better
once.
if you weren't carrying this caged canary. You could just set it down. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
The alarm goes off again. This air raid siren, and we see the world start to change. Her world. It gets darker. And what we've really established is this story exists in three different planes. There's the quote unquote real world, there's the Silent Hill world, and then there's the dark Silent Hill that is
Yes.
always brought in with the alarm signals the change.
Yeah, and everything becomes real like Freddy Krueger's basement. Like it's just everything's steel. Everything's just steel and hot, and like it's like this like weird hellscape.
The walls dissolve, they kind of like melt and flutter away.
Yeah,
And
and
there's these skittering bugs emerge from the walls and the floor.
yeah,
And again, visually, it's like, oh wow, that's an amazing
it's
scene.
impressive. Yeah,
That is probably the most dated visual effect in the movie, though, unfortunately.
unfortunately, and it's funny because while all this cool stuff's happening, like it's what you said. You're kind of like, what the heck's going on here? There's a lot of
Yeah.
running around.
Who are these people? Who are these people?
Yeah, yeah.
The bugs then attack the men in the masks. So it's like, okay, well, who's good and who's bad? Who's after who? You don't really know. And again, maybe you know if you play the game, but I didn't know.
Right.
We see Chris and the cops walking through the town again, just showing they're in the same town, but they're not experiencing the same reality. Yeah, they beat you over the head with that like way too many times.
Yeah,
And here we
it's
meet
unfortunate.
from the change to the darkness, everything I could read, everything I could find refers to him as the Pyramid Head. This
Yeah.
triangle
Oh, I,
headed.
I used to call him the triangle head. Yeah, pyramid head, I think is what it is. Yeah, but it's right from the game, so it's cool.
Yeah, she's got this huge pyramid where his head should be, and he's huge, and he's
Yeah,
carrying giant long blades.
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, who's this guy now? And it's
Yeah,
funny.
he's just a evil demon.
It's funny because as we learn more and we end up getting the backstory here, I still don't know who he is. He's a cool
Right,
visual,
right.
but I
They
don't know
never
how he
explain it.
connects to the
Yeah.
rest of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's unfortunate. Because the whole time you're watching the movie, you feel like there's gonna be a payoff of information, and a lot of it's just not explained.
Some is, but like it doesn't answer some of the others.
Right.
So the pyramid-headed creature is with the giant blades is now stalking Rose, and she seems to be done for. He's got the army of insects at his back going with him, and she seems to be out of options. But Sybil pulls her into a safe room and takes the cuffs off her and realizes whatever they're in, they're now in it together.
Yeah.
And she goes from being prisoner to they're kind of like partners
They're a
in
duo
whatever
now.
this
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
The pyramid man sticks his giant blade through this metal door and just opens it like a can opener. And
Yeah.
the metal just bends in and the bugs start flowing through the opening. And you think, okay, now they're back to being in trouble. And the dark world dissolves. It kind of flutters away like ash.
At the
Like,
very last second, yeah,
yeah,
just
the bugs dissipate and flutter away, like they're done and they're back in the normal world or the
yeah.
normal Silent Hill world. So, yeah,
It's back and forth. It gets confusing. Yeah.
yeah. So they go to the hotel where they meet a woman named Anna, and they find a picture of Sharon in the mailbox for room 111. So they say, "Well, I gotta get there. That's where I gotta go." The room is hidden behind a painting. Rose cuts through the painting and steps through and finds it. And in that room, she finds a young girl, the girl she's been chasing since she got there, and her name is Alessa, and she looks just like Sharon. But before she
Yeah.
can answer any questions, she burns away and disappears like everything else.
Yeah. And Alessa is from earlier that homeless crazy looking woman. She said her daughter was Alessa. So
Yeah.
now we're starting to be like, well, what the heck's going on here?
Anna tells them the darkness is coming and they need to get to a safe place, and they all run towards the church. Outside, Dahlia tells them not to go in the church. It's not a good place.
They're deceivers. Yeah. Yeah.
As they're running in, the Pyramid Man catches Anna, and in my opinion, the coolest scene of the movie, he
I
holds
agree.
her up and just pulls her skin off, basically dissolving her into a pile of slop.
And then throws it against the door. Yeah. I mean, for 2006, it was pretty cool animation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Like he's going to do something bad to her, but I wasn't expecting that. That was kind of cool. Inside the church, we meet Christabel. She is a zealot leader of the worshipers in there. She immediately reminds you of
The
the
Miss
Margaret Whites and the Mrs. Carmody,
Miss
all the
Carmody. Yeah. Yeah.
over the top religious zealots that
Zealot.
populate horror
Yeah.
movies. Um, they tell her that Sharon is with the demon, and they can take Rose to her. So once the darkness is over and it's safe to travel, they go to this large maze-like building, and it's got a map, and she has to
Yeah. So
memorize.
we're like at
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're like an hour into this movie and maybe a little bit longer, and we're now just getting an idea of what's going on. So you kind of have to stick with it for an hour, right? Which I think it runs a very problematic pacing issue with this movie. Get rid of all of the husband stuff and just stick with the story. I think it would have been easier to follow.
You definitely could have tightened it up with the husband and some other things. I
Yeah,
shut it off with 50 minutes left in it, 52 actually,
yeah.
and I was not yet to this part. So that means I was like an hour and 10 minutes in, and I wasn't to
Yeah.
this part yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she has to memorize her path to the room, and that room is supposed to contain the demon that's holding her daughter. So she's going to go. As she's preparing, Christabel sees her locket and recognizes the picture of Sharon in there and freaks out, calls her a witch, and
Yeah.
all the worshipers turn on her.
And it should be noted too, in the beginning, they say that the town of Silent Hill was founded by witch hunters, right? It's in Virginia, it's Silent Hill, Virginia, and this is like a 1600s town that was founded by witch hunters and they hunted witches. So there's a lore they don't really explore, but it's there.
Yeah. So they all turn on her. Sybil steps up and fights them so Rose can get into the elevator and descend into this building. And she's fighting them off very well. The elevator drops far and fast. It's one of those where you get in, you turn it on, and it's like it's going all the way to hell.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
Sybil unfortunately gets overrun and is beaten badly by the church followers. I actually thought she was dead because they were just laying into her with heavy sticks.
Yeah, yeah, they make it seem that way.
I first wrote that she was dead, and I had to go back and change my notes that she was beaten badly.
Whoopsie.
Down in the depths of where she's gone, Rose encounters a whole hallway full of deformed nurses that kind of move like the gangly person that they met outside, and
And
they're
it's actually
drawn.
it's interesting
Go ahead.
for the role for these nurses, because this is another thing that's in the video game. Like if there's light shined on them, they don't move type thing. So you have to you have to use tactics. But for the movie, they actually hired professional like dancers, so they could actually contort and move and like kind of do these like weird breakdance moves and stuff like that. So they could kind of like do like the weird stuff they did. So it wasn't CGI; it was actually
Mm.
really people just doing weird stuff.
And their movements are very unnatural and creepy. And of
Yeah,
course, they,
yeah,
their faces are gone and they're
weird and
stretched into like
contorted.
twisted. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but that wasn't CGI. That was actually really like professional dancers doing weird stuff.
nice. Well, they're
Yeah.
drawn to her light, so she has to shut her light off and then weave between them in the darkness without touching them because they all have knives and they want to hurt her. And it's funny, some of them are swinging wildly at her and cutting each other and killing each other trying to get her.
Like an accident, yeah.
But she makes it through all of them and she enters a room where she meets Alessa again. And this time Alessa talks to her and she shows her what happened, the history of the town, and why we are where we are.
Yeah, it's the exposition dump, right?
Yeah. Alessa was born out of wedlock to Dahlia and a never named father. She was tormented by the townspeople, picked on, the kid was ostracized, and the faithful, we find out that Christabella is Dahlia's sister, and she is just overbearing on her that they want to purify the sin. We need to purify this sin. We need to make it right.
Yeah.
So Christabella takes the girl to kill her. She has a fire pit set up in the middle of the great hall, and they're going to kill this young girl and eliminate the sin.
It's very much Salem's Lot, right? Like burn the young witches, they're evil, they're cursing us type thing.
Yeah. Well, there's an accident during this ritual, and the pit of molten fire spills, and that is what has caused the town to burn for now 30 years.
Hmm.
The young girl Alessa is horribly burnt and disfigured, and stuck into a hospital bed where she simmers with a hatred so strong that her personality is divided into dark Alessa, and all of her goodness is manifested into Sharon.
Hmm. So yeah, I mean we've you see these tropes in video games and stuff like that, right? Like we've seen this like evil kind of like breaks off from itself and the good parts left and the evil. It's a
Yep,
trope we've seen before.
for sure. Uh, Rose allows Dark Alessa to enter her, She inhabits her body. Her spirit rides along with her. Sharon was hidden by Dahlia to try to protect her, but the group finds her and they're going to burn the girl. And they set up another ceremony. And this is actually well done. They have Sybil and they're tied. There's a big fire pit in the middle of the room, and on opposite sides of the room there's tall wooden ladders, and Sybil is roped tied to one of them, and they're going to put Sharon on the other.
Yeah.
And Sybil is lowered, and I thought they're going to put her in the fire, but what they did was actually worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
lower her down, so she's like a camp out wiener. She's just
Just
resting
enough.
above the fire where we all know heat rises,
Yeah.
and she just bubbles and her flesh
It's
burns and
slow. It's at
cooks. And
first she's sweating, then it's like slow bubbling, and then then it's just like
uh,
it's worse. Yeah.
yeah, that actually is as brutal as that was. That may actually been my favorite scene in the movie.
Well, there's another one coming up too at the end, but
That was handled like that was done very well, very
it's very
brutal.
well. It's very brutal. Yeah.
They prepare to do the same to young Sharon, but Rose arrives and confronts them, and she's kind of telling them like, you guys are misguided, you guys are following the wrong things, you guys are, and then she's like, and then she basically tells them, you've all been dead for 30 years, but you continue, uh,
Right.
you
Right.
continue with your awful ways.
Yeah.
Christabella stabs Rose in the chest, right above the heart,
Yeah.
and we think she might be done for. But as she falls over, the blood that runs out of her is inhabited by Dark Alessa. So Dark Alessa spills out of her with her wound, and she rises up. And her vengeance is very Carrie like it's a
Yeah.
room full of people that are all now trapped, and she's there
Yeah.
to drop her wrath on all of them. But it's executed more Hellraiser style. There's barbed
Hellraiser. I
wire.
put You can't help it. You can't help but reference that. I thought the same thing with the barbed wire is coming out, and I think that my favorite kill. This is my favorite kill of the movie is when Christabel is lifted up by all the wires and she shoots all of the barbed wires into her body, and she's just screaming in agony and lets her feel that pain for a little bit, and then rips her in half. And I
Yeah,
was like, that's the coolest kill of the movie right
she
there.
squeezes them all at once, and it's just like a burst.
Boom.
It's
Yeah,
like Dr.
that was
Pimple
cool.
Popper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some great kills in this movie, surprisingly. For a moody, atmospheric movie that's 2 hours long. It's actually they actually did insert some really cool kills.
Only Dahlia is spared from this, and of course, Rose and Sharon.
No.
So Rose and Sharon get back to the car, and there was a subtle little thing here I really liked is they got in the car, and there's an overhead shot. They get the car started, and it you can see like the edge of the cliff, but as they drive, the cliff kind of disappears and the road continues.
Slowly comes back. Yeah.
Like I thought that was a well done visual shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rose calls Chris, but gets his voicemail. Chris gets a phone call back at home, but it's only static.
Yeah. I was like, what is this? The lake house?
Yeah. They get home, but you notice they're still in the white, ashy air. The
You can tell.
cinematography is very
Yeah.
different between the real world and the Silent Hill world. And they're still in this white, ashy world. They walk into the house and it seems empty. And then we cut to, we're intercut with Chris waking up on the couch and no one's there, but the door is open. And we know that Rose and Sharon are still in this alternate reality.
Yeah.
And will they ever be reconciled with Chris? We don't know. That's
Right.
it.
And
That's
that was
the end.
supposed to be the only scene with Chris was the beginning and the end. That was the scene I was talking about. And they just did all that nonsense filler. It just,
Yeah.
yeah.
The ambiguous ending, I like. I like how it doesn't,
I love an ambiguous ending. I love it. Yeah.
there's no real resolution. You know what the problem is, but you don't know how to solve it.
Yeah.
I
That's
thought,
life sometimes. In life, we don't have resolutions for things. Sometimes things just happen and there's no true resolution. We just kind of have to plow forward in life. And, I like an ending like that sometimes. It adds to the mystery. It leaves people talking about it, right? Gives you something to talk about. So it's nice.
I thought the movie overall had some incredible visuals. I thought the story was convoluted. It wasn't
Yeah.
concise. It wandered in different directions. And even the interspersed, Chris and the cop pieces really took you out of the world they were trying to put
Yeah.
you in. It could have been a lot tighter. The first half, I really didn't enjoy much at all. I did enjoy the last 50 minutes, more than the first hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's too long. It's too convoluted for my liking, but it's worth a watch because there's some amazing visuals that they pull off.
It's definitely worth the watch. It's not something to me that has a lot of. I've seen this movie 3 times now. And I enjoy it. There's parts of it, I agree with everything you said. There's parts of it that just make it's just too long. I just think the whole father, Chris, the whole father thing to me just needs to go. There needs to be a director's cut where that's just gone. And I think the movie's a little bit easier to consume. It tries too hard to be mysterious, where the director's like, just stick with me, just stick with me, just stick with me. But then you stick with the vision. It's like fine, but then what they do is an exposition dump and just explain everything to you. And it's like, well, we could have done this better. We could have done this more intelligently instead of saying, stick with us. We're gonna have all this mysterious stuff, and then some girl's just gonna explain it to you.
Yeah,
And I thought, it's kind of a cheap way to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like it,
yeah. It would have
yeah.
been better if when Dark Alessa entered Rose's body, she flashed back to all this.
Right. There's another way to do it. Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Her
Yeah.
eyes roll back in her head, and she has a
Yeah.
bit of a convulsion, and she relives all this. That would have been a better
Yes.
way than just, hey, let me tell you what happened.
Thematically, that would have been much better. Yeah, yeah, and then you could have had some vicious stuff shown with that, and yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it's tough when you have a director. The director really wanted to
Hmm.
capture the essence and do the Silent Hill universe, the movie, and then you have a writer that's like, I'm going to do it this way, and they kind of apparently they had clashed a lot. The writer wanted to do one thing, the director wanted to do another thing, and they tried to compromise the best they could. And then you have executives on top of that
Yeah,
that are saying, "Oh, also add this storyline," and it's
yeah.
just movies just become a mess. It's frustrating
The
because I thought
director
there was a lot of
actually,
good there. Yeah,
the director actually had the video game on set
yeah,
so that they could watch it and remind themselves of the imagery and of the
what they're
tone they're
doing.
trying to
Yeah,
establish, which I thought was kind of cool. But
yeah, yeah,
definitely worth a watch, and definitely one of the better video game adaptations. It
yeah,
was not critically praised at the time of its release. Had low ratings. It did a good piece of business.
yeah.
It was successful. But it's funny, people have kind of come back around now 18 years later and reevaluated it and kind
Appreciate
of
it.
hold it in higher regard than they did.
Yeah.
Always funny
Eh,
when that happens.
yeah, I'm one of those people too. When it first came out, I was frustrated with certain things, but by the third time I watched it, I was like, it's not that bad.
Yeah, no, there's definitely high marks in there. There's definitely things that they pull off fantastically.
Yeah,
But we already talked about the flaws, but hey, nothing's perfect.
yeah, yeah.
All right, well, that is our show for this week. We appreciate you watching, listening, however you find us. If you would subscribe and rate us, we would appreciate that. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry, that's Matt, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.